But let's just dig into these laws of power and figure out which ones of them, focus more on the win-win and which ones don't. Um, so law number one, never outshine the master. What do you think about that?
I'm not entirely sure I understand fully what they mean by that law.
Yeah, basically what that means is your master is your leader who's teaching you, right? So whether it's your sensei or your political leader, whatever it might be, you're trying to be the mentee. You're trying to be a loyal, not subject, but a loyal student. You're trying to be a good student. So when you outshine your master, basically you're trying to basically take his power away and say I'm better than you or I'm more prideful than you. And again, there's all these connotations with outshining them. You're taking away their power and you're basically stealing it for yourself.
I'm not super fan of this one. It sounds very traditionalist to me and
Yeah,
authoritarian.
yeah,
I was never a fan of respecting authorities by default. I
yeah,
think between mentor and mentee, the ideal relationship is still equal one. I'm very much a fan of
yeah,
equal relationships where
yeah,
you're challenging each other and are not like one is not strictly better than the other one across the board. And as a
yeah.
mentor, I would very much like to be learning things from the mentee as well, as much as they would be learning things from me. So I'm so far not a
Yeah,
big fan of this one.
I agree 100%. So I think the ones that we just agree on, we won't dwell on too much, but I think we can both agree that that one's kind of a win-lose. If you're basically trying to manipulate to work your way up by not outshining the person ahead of you because you don't want him to be jealous of you or envious of you. We got to move away from that. That's not win-win. Any kind of envy and jealousy is a win-lose situation. So I think
Yeah,
we'll probably just
too much caring about appearances.
exactly. So I think there's a number of those that are similar to that, and we can probably just skip through them and just you know, throw the same kind of comments that way. So number two, never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use your enemies. Similar kind of thing there. What do you think?
Well, I would. The second part makes sense. Like, of course, they have to find a way how your enemies can end up being constructive in the end, which is also, I think, the best way of defeating, quote unquote, defeating the enemies is like to turn them into a constructive force in your life or ultimately towards the goals that you think are the constructive goals. That's a bit like bit Machiavellian, but I think that's the sort of flavor of Machiavellian that makes sense. But then like just never trust your friends is like yeah, I wouldn't necessarily want to live a life that's that paranoid. Like my philosophy, and I
Yeah,
do have some sort of like a suspicious streak, meaning like I have this sort of personality that I'm not super easy to immediately trust people. I'm a very critical person. But at the
hmm.
same time, what I do is that I do give them opportunity to quote unquote betray me by trusting them. Meaning that like
Okay.
they can prove to me that they're untrustworthy. I'm not gonna assume that they are untrustworthy out the gates. Like maybe it would be different if it was like a war and a life or death. Like maybe I would be more in a survival
Yeah,
mode. But most situations in career and politics is not life or death. It's
yeah.
like you. I think it makes sense for your personal sanity to trust people until they prove to you because you give them a chance to prove it until they prove to you that they are
I
not
think so as
trustworthy.
well. I think so as well. And again, a win-win situation is where you're trusting each other. And, again, you don't have to trust everybody all the time. And once you develop that level of trust, it's great to just say, this person cares about me, I care about him. We're going to move forward assuming that we'll care about each other until we do something to lose or break that trust. So I think, again, that's a bit of a sad way to live, like you said. So let's move on. Law three, conceal your intentions. Again, it's a little, what do you think?
That there's a lot going for that in terms of like there's a difference between when there are no stakes and when there are stakes in what you're trying to accomplish. And I think we've mentioned in one of these talks before, there's a place for some level of secrecy, like security and like protecting whatever it is
Yeah,
that you're trying to accomplish. Because if you were completely super 100% open about everything to everyone all the time, it does open
yeah,
you up to attack. At the same time, there are strategies, even in politics, but they are more like martyr-based strategies where you
yeah,
do give every opportunity, 100% open, and you give every opportunity to a person who is bad to prove to everyone that they're bad by
yeah.
taking advantage of it. So in that case, you just need to understand if what you're doing, like fundamentally, I think I maybe actually wrote about those two fundamental strategies in my one of my magic articles, is that like there are kinds of magic, like light magic and shadow magic, and you can decide if you will be the shining beacon. That's a very inviting target, which gives hope to everyone by being completely open about everything and just truthful and honest and have integrity and everything. But that's like dangerous in that you are a target. But at the same time, it gives you protection because the light is intimidating to the like potential negative creatures. With the shadow approach, you're trying to stay hidden, so that the like evil, whatever, like the bad people can't even don't even know that you're doing anything and can't find you because they don't know who you are, and that's just not necessarily super compatible with being an inspiring figure. Because you're not supposed to be inspired, you can't inspire people when you're not seen. But there are situations in which, much more dangerous situations, in which the shadow approach might be the more reasonable approach, at least like the first try, if it's like a really dangerous situation. But then when you're sort of made, like when you're discovered, like the only thing that makes sense to do after that is to try to change into the light approach, to then like stand your ground and become so-called standing man. That I think was a whole thing in one movie with Tom Hanks that was based on real historical events, where a standing man is somebody who like regimes like the communist regimes had like a real difficulty dealing with because they were used to their intimidation working. So that they don't actually have to kill that person, so that it's just enough to threaten them, because it's like a really bad look if like there's a person who's doing nothing wrong and very visibly is just like withstanding your like torture, essentially, like whatever you're doing to torment them, and that's like a real symbol that unites people against you. So in those cases, even the bad people usually figured out that the better strategy is to leave those people alone. Because that's much less of a worse look if you just like ignore them than if you try to push the envelope and it's like every time you hit them and they fall to the ground, they just stand back up, because then it makes you look weak and pathetic. So
that makes sense.
There are multiple strategies. I would say there are multiple strategies that you can choose between.
Well, that's the interesting thing with all these laws. You can look at them from both sides. You can look at it from the side of trying to use it to push your win-win type goals, but at the same time, you're trying to fight against other, leaders that might be using these in a win-lose situation. So you need to understand the strategies from both perspectives on when to use them and when to fight against them, I guess. So that's kind of a neat thing. And the conceal your intentions definitely makes a lot of sense to me from both sides. There are times when you want to conceal and there's times when you want to trust and let the light out. So I think it's definitely an interesting one to ponder when you're thinking about how to lead well. The fourth one is very similar. Always say less than necessary. In me, that's almost the exact same thing. Not sure why it warrants a separate law, but
somebody wanted to have the maximum amount of laws. I think like those won't be 48 distinct laws. That'd be like maybe 12 would have made more sense.
Yeah, we probably could have rolled these in. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. That kind of makes sense to me.
Sure, like we're social creatures and we're hardwired, because it's a sort of evolutionary survival mechanism, is that like you don't want to push it to the extreme that like the group would throw you out into exile, because like historically that meant very bad things for you. Today it's a bit easier to be an outcast because exile of some sort won't usually mean that you physically die. So there's like a more capability for doing that sort of thing today and being fine. But at the same time, what I think, like my personal approach is like you don't necessarily want to, and I think that's sort of self-defeating. You don't want to like think about second guess every decision that you're about to make, like what will other people think about it, because oftentimes the people who made constructive change in the world were going against some sort of general feeling or idea in the society at the time, and they might have been because of that like stonewalled for a number of years, but then the right time came for the idea. And the reason why they then became the leader was that at the time when the idea started being acceptable, they have already had decades of record standing up for that idea. So there was like a point why they should have been ironically to gain political capital. It was important to be a dissident for a period of time. So. Like, yes, you don't want to be needlessly putting people off. That I think the issue is like, I think the term is edgelord. It's like somebody who's trying to be super edgy at all times, and usually the people who are like usually younger people who are like artists or even people in philosophy and politics, who they like being an edgelord when they're young. Then it's like eventually realize like maybe I don't have to be that edgy, and then they reach the peak of their potential. Like after they realize that it wasn't about the edginess. It was like, yeah, they had revolutionary, interesting ideas. It's just that there was a way that was like the better way, was a slightly less edgy way that's just not putting people
Yeah.
off, but that's being like critical or like stimulating people's thinking and stuff. So it's like edgy enough,
Right.
but not needlessly. So I think like the issue is like whatever, like if you want to make people upset with you, like is it important that you do so? Is like, is it needful? Is like something that you need to do? Or is it
Yeah.
needless? And it's just like, oh, the extent of it is just unnecessarily too much, and nothing will be gained by doing extra.
That makes sense. It definitely comes back to the trust level too. You don't want to mess up your reputation and have people not trust you. Law six, court attention at all costs. So this is about, again, I guess, trying to build your reputation, build your attention, to build your level of influence, build your sphere of influence and your sphere of power. Does that make
Again, I would
sense?
I would say, like, again, always, if I just had to answer simply, it's always yes and no.
Yeah.
But in this case, what I mean by that is that yeah, I guess that's the sort of lesson, like one of the like bits of wisdom that marketers have. It's not that I don't think they have that much wisdom, but that's like a part of it. Is
Part
that
of it, yeah.
like a squeaky wheel gets attention type stuff? Is that
Yeah.
you kind of should put what you're doing out there. It's like you don't have to be like courting attention to the absolute extreme necessarily. There's always, I think, a level beyond which you're just doing it like to your detriment, to whatever mission you have. And there's like a different levels of courting attention that make sense for different endeavors.
Yeah.
There's like but still, like it's if your ideas only stay in your head and you just, or you keep them in your drawer, then you shouldn't be surprised that they are not getting out there. So
Right.
like at the very least you need to do is like, okay, put it on the internet. It's like, don't think that like, oh, people will be upset, nobody will want to read. You don't know any of that, and none of that matters. So at least do
Yeah.
that. And if once you do that, like when I said like with the videos for this podcast, I will try to do engaging thumbnails. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it could be like I just trust that the content of what we're saying is good enough, and it's probably good enough for a lot of people, but you can reach more people who would also
Right.
would like to hear it, probably, if you just do your best shot at that's still not insane. Like I would say there's some level beyond which it's just you're communicating that you're a crazy person, but like
Yeah.
there's a degree to which you can reasonably just try to make the message appealing. So I think there's some value to marketing in that way.
That makes sense. No, I definitely agree that if our goal is to save the world and our goal is to inspire leaders, you want to get as much attention as possible towards those goals. So I think we're in full agreement there that I mean, a lot of these are kind of vague. You can, like you said, it's yes and no to all of them, but it's interesting to get our personal perspectives as we go through it anyway. So next one, this one's a bit definitely a bit edgy. Law seven: get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit.
That's just
Well,
upsetting to
feels bad.
my preferences personally.
Yeah, interesting. It's an interesting concept, but it definitely feels bad when you say it out loud like that.
I think like because like usually you could split them like in a spiritual sense. You can split them between light side and dark side. And I
Yeah,
think this one's definitely on the dark side. And
yeah, the way
I
you phrased
think
it for sure.
there are situations, like I would always say that there's like for almost any strategy or tactic, the reason why it exists at all in the universe is that there's a moment, there's a situation
Yeah,
in which it would be justified. Like if you like being a trickster, because I think this is about like part of like being a trickster archetype. And tricksters make sense in situations which are like there's like a despotic, tyrannical government, it's like a very dangerous situation, and sort of the complete illegitimacy of your opponent is like it gives you ability to be like doing shady strategies, but
yeah,
that are still completely justified just because of again the level of stakes that are being addressed. So I definitely don't mind, and that's another like culturally Czech pastime is like the archetype of Hloupý Honza, which is like I think in translation something like Simple John or something. It's like a sort of a national hero archetype, which is like a
mm,
trickster type of person who is like when he's facing like in fairy tales, like facing like
yeah,
despotic monarchs or dragons or devils or whatever. He's sort of like using
yeah.
these like tricks. Is using like
Dirty
these
tactic. Yeah,
approaches to win the day, and like sort of using the cleverness, like the natural human cleverness, to get out
yes.
of seemingly insurmountable situations. So like, yes, there would be time and place where I would allow for this, but personally, I'm just really against taking credit for other people doing.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and it's definitely interesting when you think about when is this kind of thing justified? If you're trying to catch a murderer, trying to catch terrorists, or like you said, the despotics. Um, and I think again, all these laws you can look at from so many different angles. So but yeah, I definitely feel like that one's on the dark side as well. And yeah, so I don't think there's many of these we'll disagree on. I think we're pretty well in sync, so that's good.
In like Dungeons and Dragons ethical alignment.
Yeah, I think we're very close, but it's still fun to talk through them. Law 9: win through your actions, never through argument. This is kind of an interesting one as well. I typically use argument a lot more, but I can definitely see the value in actions.
Yeah, that's as somebody who has a lot of experience winning arguments in like my literal debating competitions. I always sort of had a bit of a despect to argumentation, but that was not because like it's pointless or for no purpose or whatever. But yeah. I personally have arrived at like believing that actions are much more important and say much more. Definitely say much more about the character of the person, because I can usually fairly easily make an argument that people will agree with, in principle, in theory, in words. But what sort of determines like whether they actually agree with it, not just because they've realized that they can't argue against it in the argument, but whether the indication whether they actually believe it is if their actions are aligned with what they're presumably agreeing with.
Yeah. And I think it's a great example for what we're doing here as this podcast. This is an action that the two of us are kind of doing. We've spent, decades arguing these things and talking to others about these things, but I think it is really important for the two of us to do our very best, like we talk about every week with our action items and the different things that we're trying to progress with. So I think this is definitely probably one of the best ones for us to kind of focus on, from our work of saving the world, from our perspective, is act as much as possible. Arguments still have their place, obviously, because all these podcasts, it's really about getting the words out there, at least to kind of, again, not convince people, but inspire people. But I think if we can inspire through actions, that'd be great. So Law 9 is a good one for us, I think. It's definitely light side there.
Yeah.
Law 10, infection. Avoid the unhappy and the unlucky, because the sad and angry people will essentially contagious you to be sad and unhappy and unlucky as well, right? So just essentially avoid those types. What do you think?
Again, yes and no. Yes, it's generally the people who you keep around you who like sort of have effect on your like, let's say, willpower levels or your general mood. It's not very helpful to be surrounding yourself with negative people who just completely don't believe in you, who are opposed to, or not just necessarily opposed, but just believe that whatever you're trying to accomplish can't be done. Sort of like just like negative naysayers, negative Nellies, or what the terms are. That's not helpful. At the same time, you can, I think, personally get to a place where you are able to start helping those people, where their negativity is not impacting you, but where your success at what they didn't think is possible is sort of feeding back to inspire them to change their mind. So I personally, because I think like there is like a toxic level of toxic way of doing it. Somebody I believe that has read this rule, and if they're like a marketing person and like a financial investment person, then what they've learned is like, I need to surround myself with rich people so that I become rich. And I think that's sort of a misunderstanding what the wisdom is in that, is that like the people who are around you probably have some connection to who you are as a person, but it's not that like just their collective like sum of earnings means that you are supposed to be at the average level of those earnings. Like that's not the point. The point is like, you can be surrounded with people who have personal problems and psychological problems and stuff. And what that could mean is that you surround yourself with people you're helping. So that like just the logic of the connection can be many different things.
Yeah, I like that too. Now, I think that one's definitely a little more negative, dark side perspective, because we should be trying to lift each other up. If we want to save the world, we've got to get this tide to lift all our boats at least a little bit. But that being said, we do have to be very careful not to let the negativity get to us. Not to let it contagious.
Like I can give you an example from my personal circle of friends, the closest friends. Because I think it's instructive in like what you would think is a problem, but you realize that maybe it's about something else. Because
Mm.
I specifically, because I was aware, I guess, of this rule. I was aware of the toxic version, like the people like you're supposed to ditch your unsuccessful friends and make successful friends. Because my
Right.
like circle of friends, like there's definitely connections in that. There's like a sort of it sounds may sound it's a danger. It may sound slightly arrogant, but it's sort of I'm surrounded with people who have very high IQ. And that sort of happened randomly. It's not like we're looking for smart friends. It's just like randomly in high school in the same class in high school, there was like a bunch of us, like 4 or 5 people, who happened to have, if we try to measure IQ, probably at least 140. Like, so in different ways. Like, some of my friends are really good at math, like we're like professional poker player, or really good at programming, like professional senior programmer. Like now they are, or a person who's like like advising CEOs in companies on how to do things. This is like a consultant, like so like these like different flavors of skill. Like from our group, my flavor was more artistic, spiritual things that like developing those further than the other in the group were able to on their own. But then like what was stimulating about it always is like if you have like a group of like strong-willed, smart people who are constantly clashing on particulars, then like you're sort of sharpening each other's with like mutually. So that's why like was I guess the reason why the sort of unit my circle was working. But if you looked at it from like the success perspective, like we like until like a very late time in our lives, relatively speaking, like we're sort of never had a full-time job. We're not like just not interested in material things or haven't had anything solved. We don't have families actually, like very similar in that like we haven't not even started family, because for many of like people I know, it was like either okay pursuing career or I'm pursuing family, and it was very hard to like in Czech Republic, slightly hard to combine these two like objectives.
Okay.
But in our group was like to both of these was like no thanks. So it was like a different path. So in that sense, you could call us like very unsuccessful. And
Mm.
but the thing is, it's not like static in time. Like it's I think these things are about growth. And like
Right.
since like I don't know, decade ago, because it was like we know each other for at this point it's almost 20 years. So it was like you could look at like in some like when we were in university, like and make some sort of like a judgment, like maybe if I want to like be ambitious and actually succeed, I should ditch those friends and make like a new group of friends who already are like really motivated to be career oriented. But like sort of I
Yeah.
sticked with these friends, and like sort of mutually we sort of moved into a place where now we all have jobs. Like we have full-time jobs which are like pretty good actually, like on Czech Republic, like pretty well paid, like above average at least, or like towards the higher end. And we are really actually starting to do meaningful creative projects. So it's just like, yeah, I could say like it took a while to
Yeah.
get there. But at the same time, it's like we as a group, like we collectively grew. It is something that like there's a like you should recognize the dynamism of it. It's like not supposed to be
There's
like
a
a snapshot in time, like how we are right now, what money are we making in
Yeah.
the moment. It's the potential, the trajectory. I much like would stick with people who may not have figured everything out now, but I know have
Okay.
great potential, than people
Yeah,
who
it's
like
like
already have to be succeeding.
that makes sense. It's like there's an incubation period almost where you have to kind of get ready to come out of the shell, and then boom, you're ready for the world. You know,
Could
you're
be
ready
like
for the
just like a
big
timing
task.
issue, maybe necessary,
Yeah.
but also the potential. I would very much like to focus
Okay.
on potential of people, not what they have already accomplished.
That makes sense. I like that. No, that's definitely it's there's definitely some good parts to that anyway. Is being mindful of it, I think, is definitely important regardless. Cool. All right, so let's move on to Law 12. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. Again, a victim, anything with victim
No,
in the word is a little negative, but
yeah, and it also sounds
yeah,
like a manipulative argumentational technique. So that's dark side
yeah,
for sure. I just don't
it's
feel
definitely
like
dark
I need to
side.
do that at
Yeah,
all.
yeah, I don't even want to spend any time on
Well,
those
I would
ones.
just
Let's just
say like the alternative, like that I figured out because in the debating world, when you're trying to win debating competitions,
Mhm.
most debaters who sort of stick with the program for a long time and then like have ambitions of being politicians or lawyers, they would sort of agree with this sort of like I need to figure out the manipulative verbal thing that if I say push the right buttons, it works out, and
Yeah,
that's how they think that you're supposed to be winning debates. In my
yeah,
example, I sort of made it a project to myself to prove that that's not necessary. And so when I was debating in high school, I made it a point to always try to win by simply like having the better, honest argument. Like
Right.
in the philosophical sense, actually really win the idea and never resort to sort of demagogic, like manipulative word plays and like debating techniques. And we have at some point, like my team, in 1 year when we were at our peak, I was the best individual speaker of the National Debate League. It was a team of 3 people. One of my co-debaters was the second best, and the other was the third best.
Oh,
So
nice.
we sort of like won everything that whole year, except the finals. We sort of like the only debate we lost was the final, so we ended up second in like the whole
Okay.
thing. But like there was a before then where 4 tournaments with 6 debates each, and we like won all of them decisively, because there's like you can win decisively or sort of like a almost draw but slightly win. So we like decisively won like every debate that year and had the highest personal score. So and again, we were just really trying to just make a better argument. So I've proven to myself that you always have like sort of dark side, light side choice. And you can make the light
Yeah,
side choice.
like
You
that.
can say it's more difficult, but then in that way, it's more rewarding, because by winning the more difficult way, you're becoming even better in terms of like
Yeah.
selfishly, in terms of your skill level.
Yeah, for sure. If we're thinking of saving the world as leaders from a Jedi Knight perspective, I think we definitely want to focus on light side as much as possible.
Yeah,
And in
just
general,
I
there aren't
think
too
just
many people
the
that actually want to belong to the Sith
like I would
or
just
the
like what
dark
I would
side.
like argue with anybody is that just like you have to realize is like, because many political realists are always arguing or trying to make it look like the dark side is the only way, the light side has to fail.
Yeah,
No, it doesn't have to fail. Like I've seen
doesn't
many
have to.
times, personally proven to myself, light side can win.
It can win. I like it, and yeah, and it should win as much.
Sure,
And
that's
we should be striving to make a world where the
yeah.
light side wins more often,
But
I
that's
think.
like
And I
many
think
of the Machiavellian people would tell you, like, yeah, it should. It just don't really think it can. Like, no,
no,
the
it
really
can.
important point is
It
it
can.
can. It
It
has
can.
historically at times.
Yeah, I like that. All right, awesome. Law 13. When asking for help, appeal to the self-interest of others, never to their mercy or gratitude.
That's very Machiavellian, but in the better
Yeah.
sense, like sort of like a
Yeah.
good Machiavellian point. I think you can still appeal to all 3. Like you don't have to pick which one you're appealing to necessarily. You just first try
Yeah.
to appeal to the like better angels, and if that fails, you can also always appeal to self-interest. That's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, and I think again, from our perspective of saving the world, it should be in everyone's self-interest to save the
That's yeah.
world, right? Like no one wants the world to die unless you're
Yeah.
psychotic or really really messed up for some reason.
Yeah, that makes
So I
it
think
easier. That like makes
yeah, it
the
makes it easy.
job much easier.
But at the same time, you're right. Yeah, it's there's no it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive for sure. Mercy and gratitude have their place, I believe as
Or
well.
will
In
motivate
many
some people. There's like you just make that argument, it will motivate some people who won't be motivated by self-interest necessarily.
yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Cool. So that one's a little more dark side too, although it does have some light side.
It's
Law
more gray.
14.
That's
Pose.
like one of the more like
It's
gray
more gray.
Jedi.
Yeah, some of them are both. Yeah, it depends on how you're using it exactly. Uh, 14 is pose as a friend, but work as a spy. Yeah, spy. What do you think about espionage?
Well, I would say again, because I always have to, I'm like trying not to mention it by where I get it from. I guess in this case I have to. If you look at like an archetype of a Scorpio, which is like from mythology, is an archetype of Hades, the ruler of the underworld. That's like a part of human psyche. That's because like nobody disputes that ancient Greeks in their mythology, like nobody disputes that they've captured some real aspects of human psyche and real stories of that repeat in the lives of people. That's why it's classics. So in this sense, it makes sense to have the capacity, like to not be completely naive. Like, I wouldn't say like pose as a friend, because there's no requirement for that to be disingenuous. But you can always try to at the same time be aware, like be a keen observer. Because of course you have to be aware that some people that you want to be a friend to may have some ulterior motives or like problems and stuff, and you would want to notice. If like there are red flags, you would want to notice. I just don't think you should think of it as like you spying on unsuspecting people you pretend to be friends with.
Yeah.
It's just like, yes, have friends and be like legitimate friend to them, and in the interest of that, try to be informed and aware.
Yeah, it can be win-win. Yeah, you can be spies have their reason, to exist. They're trying to keep ourselves safe, keep the world safe from terrorists, from evil bad things and evil bad ideas. So if you can just be aware of that and you're trying to like you said, be as aware as possible from all the evil, negative things around you, and trying to counteract that by being aware of it and by making it transparent where it needs to be, and maybe working behind the scenes in some cases to combat the negativity wherever you need to. So that there's definitely some
Or
good
just like
lessons we
I
can learn
think
from that
the
one.
key point that I was trying to make, that sort of the rule implies, is that you don't have to be disingenuous about like your relationships with
Yes,
people. That's not
I like
necessary.
that. It's yeah, the pose is kind of a bad word. I think it's like be a friend, but also be a spy too.
Or
Like you can
like,
be
well,
both.
I sort of didn't want to mention it, but I guess I have to. It's like one catchphrase from like Lenin, actually is applicable, which is like trust but verify.
Trust but
So
verify.
that's like one of what of
I
like
like it.
very few bits of wisdom that I think have some merit in that like
There you go.
ideology.
Okay. Yeah, so that's again a bit of a gray area, but I think we can focus on the light side from our perspectives and be friends, but also be aware and observant. Law 15, I think we don't need to spend too much time on because it's definitely very, very negative. Crush your enemy totally because they'll come back to bite you if you don't completely crush them.
Well, that's the thing. That's the sort of wisdom in that if you are in a win-lose situation, then you should
Yeah,
make sure that like that your victory over the other is
yeah,
permanent, because like you've mentioned earlier in this talk, they will come back to bite you. Like there will be like I think my favorite way of putting it is like in Marvel, it's like Avengers. It's like if we
yeah. The
like
Hydra.
don't defeat you, then like if like we lose, then we will avenge you, like what we've
Yeah,
lost.
total
So
revenge.
like there will be Avengers. This is like
Yep.
essentially. But I think like the sort of lack of wisdom in that rule is that like you may think that you have permanently destroyed it, but I don't think that's possible,
Yeah.
because I think
No.
there's like one of a sort of poetic way to put this, that I've like lost the book. I've like I went to poetry festivals for many years in my life to again compete as a recitator, and usually I was given like as a kind of a award or reward, I was given like one of like was a series of books about poetry, which is like super like rare kind of thing, like really smart analytical people explaining really how things work in poetry. It's like very hard to get to. And one that I have
Yeah.
lost, I think I've like lended it to someone and just like didn't return it, and I forgot where it was. There was this like a really poet. There was like a series of quotes from one of like sort of lost Czech poets that I've never even heard about before, but it's like in like among the like sort of community of like art connoisseurs in like the Czech culture, is like was considered as one of the greatest. And so he has like he used it for like truth as such, but I think you can use it in the sense of like the existence of like the idea that you've tried to squash, because usually it's not about like destroying a person. You would have to destroy the ideas of that person, but every time you try to do that, and that was sort of the poetic way to put it, is like every try to destroy the truth or the idea in this sense, it has to sort of like second law of nature. It will arise
Yeah.
somewhere else in the universe, like as like a monolith to itself. It's like you
Yeah.
can't squash the opposition, like you can't destroy it permanently, because even if you like this, like in medieval sense, if like you end a bloodline, like so there's nobody to avenge them, it's like
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
will be
Yeah.
someone like in the future. It doesn't have to happen to you like physically personally harm you,
Yeah.
but whatever you were standing for, your legacy, like whatever it was the important thing that you wanted to succeed, will be
Yeah.
then destroyed by somebody who will take up the mantle of the idea that you try to destroy. And the more dark side you did it, the more guaranteed it is that somebody who's like
Yeah.
light side will rise up again in the name of it to destroy your legacy.
Yeah, every Seth Lord gets taken down eventually. Some of them last for millennium, maybe,
Yeah,
but they'll all get taken down by light side eventually. But yeah, I think especially from the terrorism perspective, where if you cut off one head of the Hydra, two heads
yeah.
spawn, and
That's another Marvel quote that's very applicable to this. Yeah.
yeah. So it's just because it's so near impossible to crush any enemy totally, we probably should focus on making peace with our enemies as much as possible, where it's doable at
Or
least anyway.
like
So
ending enmity as a
yeah,
thing.
ending. Yeah, yeah. Just and again, win-win situations. This definitely is not a win-win situation at all. So let's focus on the win-win. Very cool. Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. This is kind of one of those absence makes the heart grow fonder, or more with the relationships, where if someone thinks you're not always there, or they think
Yeah.
you're leaving, they'll appreciate you more, and they won't take you for granted.
I think that's a bit of a gray one, because like yeah, you could like overuse it as a manipulative psycho person, but
Yeah,
there's a value in understanding that it is a dynamic that
yeah,
works. Like you don't want to sort of in that sense oversell yourself,
yeah,
or like make it like maximally super too easy.
Yeah.
because the sort of investment of people in whatever you're trying to do is part of on their journey of actually becoming involved, like and thinking it has value. I think the main like pragmatic way this manifests is that you have. Like you make people like pay like some this can be a small amount, but you like have the people pay a little bit for getting like to your lecture or something. It's not like to
Yeah.
make money off the lectures necessarily, but even people who have all the money they may need still would do that, so that people who actually then choose to be in that lecture value it. So there's like
Yeah.
there's again more of a marketing wisdom, but that it's again it is kind of a wisdom in there.
No, it makes sense. And this one definitely has its place as far as just being aware of it. I mean, developing trust, developing commitments are also important, but at the same time, not taking each other for granted is very important. You know, especially like this kind of applies maybe to us too, because like I said, this is extremely important to me that we continue doing this as long as it's effective and we're both enjoying it. But sometimes I feel like, you know, I don't want to be too excited or too happy about it because then maybe he'll get bored with me or whatever, right? Or maybe he'll feel like, oh, this isn't worth my time anymore. Luke's getting boring now,
Well, that's the
or I don't
thing.
know.
You're a bit in luck because I'm in sort of the like meta philosophical position of I understand all of these issues and I chose not to be controlled by them. So
Yeah,
even if
yeah,
I'm still human and have impulses, like I'm not going to let those impulses dictate what I'm going to decide to do. But yeah,
yeah,
but for most people, it takes a lot of like work. Psychological work on yourself to get to a place where you sort of free yourself from those impulses, and I don't blame people for having subconscious impulses. I just like try
yeah,
to factor that in whatever I'm doing. So in my like personal cooperations or relationships, I'm trying to not being like too forward in that, like, because I really could again be like always there, always like helping with everything, always just be proactive, always setting up meetings, like always doing stuff. But I've learned that like if I do that, then I don't know if that other person is actually interested. I
yeah.
have to scale that back in, and then if they then like even after a period when I wasn't engaging, they come back. That's a sign that they actually that they mean it, that they want to be involved.
Yeah, and I like that. It's definitely definitely applies to us as far as finding a balance for how this whole podcast thing is going to go, how our whole project and our books and all these things, how they progress is definitely kind of important for us to both you know, be aware of each other's
Yeah.
goals and aware of
It's,
each
just
other's
just
ideas.
relax. Just
Yeah,
like
just
yeah, just
relax.
relax.
Don't worry about it. Just have fun and enjoy the ride. So I think that's good for us to be mindful of. Cool. I keep saying the word cool every time. I gotta stop that.
I
All right.
realized that I was saying essentially very often the word, so I'm really trying to
Yeah.
control that.
Yeah, it's my dad was really big at saying the word okay. Like anytime he did a speech, he would start almost every sentence with okay, okay, and he was a good speaker for the most part, but I kept on getting after him about that, and even you know, 50 years of public speaking, he just kept using the same word. It's kind of
Well,
interesting how it
for
just sticks
that,
with you sometimes.
what you need to do is be recording yourself and force yourself to listen to the recordings, and then like
Yeah,
become sort of annoyed and ashamed at yourself for doing it. That it motivates you to stop it. That's how that
yeah,
is being
exactly.
rooted out.
Yeah, I think as the two of us watch these things more often, we'll hopefully get better at knowing what words to avoid and such. Okay, 17, law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability.
That's
A little
very
similar.
Like old school Machiavellian. I don't think the terror is something that fits into our project.
No, it doesn't at all. Let's move on. That's definitely a dark side we don't need to worry about. And it's similar to the stuff we've already talked about. Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. This is a little contradictory to some of the other ones, actually. And I think these 48 laws, again, they contradict each other sometimes because you're trying to be, you know,
Everything,
Machiavellian
all the
and
different
secretive,
things. Yeah.
but at the same time, you can't be isolated. You have to get out there. You have to put yourself out there, commit to people, trust people to some extent. So there's definitely, like I
But
said, a time and place for
also,
everything.
that's why I would be more inclined to agree with it, because like historically, one strategy that never worked is building walls in the literal
Yeah,
sense. And it's sort of a more updated version of this wisdom that independently was arrived at by one of my friends who's a very smart player of games, like strategy games. So he was like, in strategy in StarCraft, it doesn't pay out to try to build stationary defenses.
yeah,
Because always what you was more useful is anything that can do damage that's moving around. So
Yeah.
like if for a Protoss, if your choice is like the tower, the defense tower, or it is the photon cannon, or if it's the Dragoon, which is essentially the same thing but on legs, you should
Yeah.
invest into Dragoons because you can move them. Like the only strategy with walls is like in there is a metaphor for reality. It's like if you want to like commit to strategy of passive defenses, then you have to like I think it's called heavy metal, which means like build the whole surface of the map, cover it with the passive defenses, so that it doesn't matter that they don't move because they're literally everywhere.
They're everywhere.
So that's like
Yeah.
it's like, but historically that's just in both literal and metaphoric sense. That's the sort of passive defense strategy is always a losing strategy because somebody
Yeah.
who's being more proactive or has the capacity to be mobile or whatever in metaphorical literal sense it might mean is more just adaptable and more survivable or more
Yeah.
effective as a strategy.
Someone will eventually create a cannon that will break down your walls.
Exactly.
There's always the evolution. So being open and helping each other move forward again, and this is a very much a win-win thing to just kind of not isolate ourselves, but share all the knowledge, open source it. So this definitely applies to us, and I
Yeah,
think we can
open source is another
definitely use
example
this.
of how the strategy is just more effective. Like the other companies, like the competitors of companies like Red Hat, did everything they could to sort of stomp it down because they thought that the closed source model is better, but they've just started losing on every level because it was
Yeah.
more secure, it was more functional, it had more and better features, people liked it more, wanted it more, so they just capitulated and realized, okay, so let's just be all together in the open source stuff.
Great. So Law 18 is a good one. That's probably one of the best.
Yep.
Law 19, know who you're dealing with. Don't offend the wrong person. That
That's
kind of makes sense.
sure. You need to understand who you're speaking with to be able to effectively do anything. You could use this to effectively manipulate them, but you can also try to use this to effectively inspire them. It's just
Yeah.
you have to understand. It's just communication. It's just communicating better versus communicating worse.
No, that definitely, definitely something we can use
Just
as well.
give me a second. I will just turn on light there because it's getting a bit dark.
Oh, okay. All right, great. We'll
A bit more
try to
light.
continue through it.
More light
I'd like
side.
if you have to go, if you do have to go, let me know. But we'll try to get through
No,
these
no,
48.
you don't have to go. I just had to go turn on the light.
It's all good. All right, cool. We're getting there. Law 20, don't commit to anyone. I think, again, this is very similar to the trust one. I don't think we need to dwell on it, but I think commitment's very important, especially if we're trying to help each other.
Another one that's just
really
sad.
argument. Yeah, it's just you're not gaining the benefit of relationships if you're not committing. Even something as simple as marriage. I mean, does this guy not believe in marriage? I don't know. Like, you obviously have to commit to a family or to a group of any kind, to some extent. So that one's a bit definitely sad, negative side of things that I'm not quite
But
sure why it
also
fits there,
negativistic because it's I think unnecessarily doubting that like believing that that's what you need to do is I think it's not necessary.
It's like you're always on guard, and I see the need to be on guard, not commit to the wrong person, but yeah, just making a law don't commit to anyone seems very sad to me, but anyway, we'll call that one a dark side and then move on. I think Law 21, play a sucker to catch a sucker, appear dumber than your mark.
That's part of the trickster thing. Like again, in situations in which I think it's okay to be a trickster, like for instance, very constructive are tricksters who are like trolls, who I think they've even made a documentary, I think it was called Yes Man, where they, do you know about that?
Yeah, I think I did see that one. Yeah.
So like they were like visiting, sort of getting themselves involved under false pretenses, of course, in like sort of stuck-up corporate elite people's things, like their parties and events and stuff, and then like sneaked to make like a obviously completely silly presentation to them, like a device that's obviously offensive, that like to help them better control their like employees and stuff. And then the joke was that the corporate audiences like didn't understand that it was problematic and obviously crazy, and they were just like applauding it and thinking like that's the best idea ever. So there's definitely place for like trolls and tricksters who can help by like sort of unmask again the more tyrannical or like crazy people in power, or Borat. Just like the sort of a clown person who just like unmasks somebody's offensive ideas by confronting them with a sort of a false pretense joke.
Yeah, we definitely need to employ some of these things to point out win-lose situations so that we can avoid those ones and move towards the win-win. So it makes sense. Um, okay, Law 22, use a surrender tactic, transform weakness into power. This talks about like if you're going to lose at anything, surrender before you lose, before you get completely destroyed so you can live to fight another day,
I
right?
think that's a
So,
big part of pacifism and how it
mm,
works, because if you're a pacifist, you essentially concede that you're not going to oppose the other person militarily. So in fact, you effectively surrender. In if you want to put
mm,
it into the military terms, that your opposition thinks are the only terms in which you can put something. But in
yeah,
that surrender, you are exercising a kind of power. So
yeah,
that's it's definitely a big part of humanistic pacifistic movement. Is this like your point is not like for the win-win versus win-lose, your point is not to make them lose necessarily. The
right.
point is to, if they are really, the other side is really hell-bent on the making you lose, then just like to
Mm,
create a situation in which through your surrender you can communicate what's the problem with that whole philosophy.
right.
That's your
And
sort
so
of
that
like
makes sense.
you're rejecting the power game.
Yeah, there's definitely a light side potential to surrendering and suing for peace versus continuing a war, right? Where you can't win, and then picking the battles too is important. If you can't win a certain argument, or you're arguing against someone who's just so hell bent on destroying you, then you sometimes you just have to surrender to that person and not let them, agree to disagree in some
Or at
cases
least like,
maybe.
because like what you don't want is to be turned into your own enemy, like to be then,
Yeah,
like, in order to defeat them, to become exactly as bad as them. That's one problem.
yeah,
The other situation is that in debating, there's a version of this where if you just lose an argument, then admitting it is saving face. That's the like
yeah.
best thing you can do to still maintain being respectable.
That makes sense. Definitely some room for growth with that. Okay, concentrate your forces, Law 23. Makes sense. It's kind of
Sure.
vague enough that it doesn't make, there's
That
really no argument against
no,
trying to make
because
sure your base of
that
power is
makes complete sense,
good.
because that's like, I think things like fake news are designed to disrupt this, to
Yeah,
deconcentrate the
yeah,
ability of the people to solve the problem.
yeah. We definitely want to focus on good things as much as possible. Focus on win-win. Make sure our message is clear. Make sure that we can concentrate all of our message into one powerful phrase almost, or one powerful mission statement,
Or
so
just
that
to
we
make
can
sure
kind of
that we do maintain consensus. It's
yeah,
it's not that just to make sure that we don't fragment into
yeah.
mutually exclusive projects.
Yeah, almost every big group has that challenge at some point or another as they grow, as they splinter off into all these different subsets, and it's about just really trying to keep your message pure as you can to continue to be successful. So that would make sense. Law 24, play the perfect courtier. I guess that just means about not trying to be the leader per se, but trying to be the supporter of the leader, so that if that leader ever falls, you don't necessarily fall with them. You can kind of choose sides and move around
That's
wherever you can and follow the
again
winners.
quite Machiavellian,
Yeah,
but I would make it a more grayish thing, because like it depends on, like, I think these are situational in like what is the situation in which you're operating. And
yeah,
sometimes the best strategy is to be like in the front, the leader, the obvious one, that just like you, or making it clear that you are aspiring to be in like the top position. Sometimes the courtier, or somebody who's like you say, like not necessarily like, it's more of like it's called gray eminence. Is like the one who's more a behind the scenes type person who just has good relationships with everybody. That can be like
yeah,
a very effective political position. It's not compatible with that light strategy, meaning that like with the
yeah,
approach of being a beacon. That's like it's just more of the shadows. That's more of the shadow strategy than it is the
yeah.
light strategy.
No, it makes sense. That again. That one fits into the time and place and figuring out where you're going to be doing it, when you need to be a spy, when you need to be open. So that ties in with that. Law 25, recreate yourself. Pretty vague, but you can dig into that as much or as little as you want. But it's about having a good image, and a good purpose. Recreating your purpose each and every day to keep yourself motivated, I guess.
Yeah, sure. That's like one of the like more flexible, growth-oriented approaches. But again,
Yeah,
it's pretty vague, so you can sort of make it
yeah,
mean whatever you want.
yeah, exactly. We don't need to dwell on the vague ones. It's just general advice to live by is continuously making yourself better, recreating yourself. Law 26, keep your hands clean. Talked a little bit about that before with the trust issues, reputation issues, very similar to that. I don't really see how it's any different
Yeah, I
from
think
reputation.
because I sort of, when I previously was answering the reputation point, I sort of understood it in a bit different way. Now I realized that what I meant was reputation is like people, what they think of you in general is like one
Hmm.
thing. Reputation
Yeah.
in this sense of like making sure that you have like maintained like demonstrable integrity. That's like for sure what I definitely agree with, that you it's
Yeah.
completely unnecessary, or at least like when it's completely unnecessary, then like definitely steer clear of anything that would compromise you, because whatever your message is, and I think it's also a counter strategy. That's like what bad people try to do to stop good movements, is to compromise their leaders, so that like then even if the leader is still like trying to do the shady thing in order to further the movement or like improve things, instead of just being convinced that that's what they need to do, is like the point
Yeah.
is that it is then undermined, it undermines itself, because then the opposition can just point to the moral compromise and be like, see, they're compromised, so you shouldn't believe
Yeah.
anything that they're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's good all around advice. I think we should always do our best to again use the words carefully and try to keep clean as much as we
Or
can.
just like
So
I think the most sort of trivial version of this is that they buy you off. It's just like sort of a bad look in general, that like you are railing against corporate wrongs, and then like a corporation has you on their payroll. That's sort of
yeah,
the way to
yeah,
defeat or squash the movement. That's
yeah.
actually pretty effective.
No, definitely, it definitely applies to what we're trying to do to save the world. Okay, and then Law 27. This one's a little interesting again for us. We talked a little bit about before, but it's called or create a cult-like following by playing on people's need to believe. So definitely ups and downs with this. We
Yeah.
don't want to play on people. We want to inspire people, right? And again, the word inspire being a better word. And we talked before a little bit about cults. You know how you can have kind of good cults and bad cults. Obviously, there are
Or better
some
or worse, at least.
better or worse cults. Yes. So I don't think we need to dwell too much on it, but it's definitely an interesting way of thinking about leading a movement to save the world. You definitely need people to believe in
Yeah.
you, and you need to inspire each
A
other, right?
belief has to be involved, but it's not supposed to be a cult in the sense of like a belief in the great leader. That's
Yes.
the danger, is what you're like inspiring them to believe in specifically. That's
Yeah.
one thing.
Yeah. We're not trying to have them believe in us. We're having them believe in the idea of a better world, believe in the idea of progression and making the world that we want. So I think it definitely some things we can learn from it, but we got to be careful on the wording and the way it's worded. It's again very kind of negative and dark side. Next one, Law 28. Enter action with boldness. This kind of makes sense. You always be
Sure.
bold, be confident. I don't think there's anything wrong with again the action being the key versus the argument. So I
That's
think we
that's
definitely
just the fact of human psychology. Just people
yeah.
respond to confidence, so there's no reason to not be confident.
Yeah, it's definitely something we both need to always be mindful of. Law 29, plan all the way to the end. This is very hard to do.
Uh,
It's definitely a good goal to always try to plan ahead, but it's so hard. You never know when you're going to actually end anything. You kind of start a project with an end in mind, but then it evolves and changes a million times throughout the project.
No,
So,
the this approach makes more sense in the zero sum games, because in zero sum
mhm,
games there's a clear end point to which you're trying to
yeah,
get, and in that case you can play chess about it, and then like
sure.
treat it following game theory, treat it in that like I can plan my moves and do that. When
Yeah,
like you're trying to achieve something that's open ended, then and it's also will likely be affected by black swans, like the random
yeah,
statistical changes in how everything works that are completely unpredictable. Then your
yeah,
plan like that you have can't be this sort of literal like step by step complete plan toward the end, because you don't know what the final end point is at all.
yeah.
And then I guess different approaches on the basis of game theory have to be contemplated. So I think this is
Yeah.
situational or applicable to a situation in which you have a clear game with clear rules that can be
It would
won.
it would be kind of interesting to see what would be our personal end goal as far as saving the world. When would we consider the world saved? It's because it is fun to at least think about it. And I mean, for me, I would consider it at least close to complete, if not ever fully complete, when 99.9%, let's just say, of the world has access to clean water, education, opportunity, and the ability to live a full and joyous, progressive life. I mean, I think that's kind of at least a goal in my mind.
Yeah, it just like
Maybe
has
99%
just
enough.
thinking of like debating objections that technically would invalidate your argument. Like, okay, so 99.9%, but out of how many? What if the remaining percentage, the fraction, is 10 trillion people because we've spread into space? Maybe that's a problem
Yes,
still.
yes.
That's just a technical sort of like a nitpicky counter
Yes,
argument. Another one is also maybe like if I were to phrase it, I would phrase it like everybody who wants to. So it's
everyone who
like more
wants
of
to.
sort
Okay,
of an anarchist twist on it, that it doesn't have to be
I
enforced
like it.
system, but it has to be like if you ask for it, you should be able to get it.
Yeah,
That's definitely then kind of solved in that sense.
that makes
And
perfect sense. Yeah.
also, like, what was the other nitpicky counter argument? I forgot what I had like another nitpick, but it sort of doesn't matter. Yeah, like basically,
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's about you can like just quibble over the like very specifics, but like in my point of view, like yeah, probably it would be saved literally when like the environmental situation is addressed properly. So it doesn't have to
Okay.
be like it, and it's already great climate, but it has to be like yeah, we have clear plan in place to
Sure.
ensure certain outcomes. That's one part of it. From like if I'm literally thinking about world saved, then it's also like, and we've also made sure that like an AI wouldn't run rampant because we've started to create them in a
Yeah.
way that we can understand what they're doing, and that we've
Yeah.
also made sure that we've like built our like energy infrastructure properly, that it's like not just going to explode, and we've made sure that the nukes won't just
All
be
these.
launched willy-nilly at like a random point if
Yeah.
somebody really wants to, and that we've made sure that like we have an asteroid watch and an asteroid is not gonna
Yes.
impact, and we've
Yeah.
figured out what to do about like a super volcano that's like approaching.
All the big
So it's just like
existential ones.
if I'm thinking like Hollywood saving the world, like, but it's still
I hear you.
serious. Like that, like yeah, these
Yeah.
things like a counterpart to what you said. Like yeah, people should be
Okay.
like
No,
be
that
able
makes
to live
sense.
their lives in the right way, but also at the same time there still should be a reasonable hope to expect that the planet will still be there in a certain amount
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah. And again, I mean, you can always say for how long too, right? 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, or 1,000,000,000,000, right? And the heat death of the universe is 10 to the 100 years away, which is quite a while. But arguably our sun is going to die in 5 billion years, so we move to another sun five
Sure.
billion years from now. I mean, and it's just fun to think about what would be our goal from this podcast. When would we consider this podcast to be complete or successful from that perspective? And it can change every week, but it's fun to think about what that end goal might be. And so that kind of does apply to us, is trying to plan with some kind of end in mind, think about what our personal end might be, where we
I
move on
think
to something else.
the only one issue that like really has a strict deadline is currently the environmental issue, because there's a timeline.
Yeah.
So that there you
Definitely
can like
timeline.
have a very specific set of goals at particular times that you could plan that
Yeah.
are kind of necessary to happen.
No, that's for sure. Definitely, we can think about that and evolve those plans as we move forward. So it definitely applies to us a little bit. Okay, great. Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. It's kind of interesting.
That's part, I think, of the confidence thing.
Yeah, yeah, very, very similar. I don't really see much difference there. It's just about being bold, and doing the best you can, but not feeling like you're stressed out or working too hard that you can't handle it, right?
Yeah,
So
you
it's
shouldn't like use your body language to dissuade your like the people from believing that what you're doing like works. That's just pointless if you just can't control even just your body language.
yeah. I think as long as we're doing this podcast, we definitely want to be enjoying it. If it ever gets to a point where it's a drag or we don't look forward to it, we can do something else. We can try something else. But I think that's definitely a key point to bear in mind, is that it should be effortless. This should be a fun thing that we enjoy doing. Saving the world needs to be fun and effortless if it's going to work. We have to find ways to make inspiring leaders effortless.
Yeah, if we
I
can't
like that.
inspire ourselves to even do a podcast, then that's probably a sign that you need to rethink what we're doing.
Exactly. I like it. So that definitely applies. Light side there. Law 31. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal.
That's again very
Setting
game
rules for the
theory.
game. Yeah, game theory. I think it kind of applies, wherever you're playing that game. It makes sense to try to set your own rules for what saving the world means, for what inspiring leaders means,
Yeah,
and
just
you know,
if you
others.
decide to be playing a game, then you might as well decide to try to win it. Is like sort of the
Exactly.
wisdom of game theory.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that definitely applies to us as this podcast being the game that we're playing. That's fun. Okay. Law 32, play into people's fantasies. Fantasy is an interesting concept. That definitely,
That's
I
again
think, applies to saving the world.
a bit of a
Yeah.
marketing thing again.
Yeah. It's about hope, right? It's about trying to figure out what is your fantasized perfect world. What is your utopia, right? And utopia is such a unattainable thing to so many people. But if we can make it seem just a little bit more attainable or a little bit more hopeful, you know, the whole Star Trek Next Generation concept can kind of be a good sci-fi fantasy that can help lead us towards a better
Sure,
world,
I just
basically.
think like a fantasy is a bit of a loaded term, maybe even more so than
Mhm.
utopia. In that, like, sort of the implication is that it's not real. This is like just the
Yeah,
like the only objection to like how it's phrased is from me is that it's like I think hope is a better word because like hope doesn't have,
yeah,
like it still may not work out, like may not pan out. That's the point of hope, but hope like implies there could be a real thing that's good.
yeah.
It's what you're
I like
imagining.
that. No, I agree with you. Again, it's the wording and how you use it. You don't want to mislead people. We're not trying to mislead anybody. We're trying to make a fantasy real. We're trying to make a hopeful, potential, beautiful world a little bit more attainable. So I like it. It again depends on how we use it. Law 33, discover each man's thumb screws. This is a bit more negative again. You're trying to figure out ways to leverage other people,
Yeah, I
right?
think
And
like the whole leverage thing, it makes sense. Like you have to do it for people who are not open to be convinced by argument and who are hell bent on just like it's just me, and I don't care what happens to everybody else. Like those people
yeah,
sometimes only respond to leverage. So
yeah,
that's like a it's like a how to treat people is like should depend on or makes sense to depend on what kind of person they are, and it's like some people that's the only if they make it so that that's the only thing that they respond to, then that's
yeah,
the only thing you can do to make sure that they don't do more damage. So that's again in the secret intelligence agency territory where there are situations in which the opponent pushes you where like that they make it about that they just essentially
yeah.
decide that that's the only way that you can mitigate the damage that they're going to do, and that's the point where it becomes a strategy that must be contemplated.
That makes sense. And from our perspective of the Saving the World group, you could say that leaders that want to inspire each other to save the world, their enemy is essentially anybody who doesn't want to do that, who doesn't think it's worth the time. Oh, you'll never save the world. Don't bother. Let's just
Or
focus on saving
like
yourself.
literally has the opposite plan,
Yeah, they just want more for themselves, less for everybody else,
or
right?
more
Anybody
chaos,
who's
or just to
more
like the
chaos.
Joker
Yeah,
said, to see the world burn.
see the world burn. They just think it's fun to have chaos. So anybody from that group, and there's definitely people there. I don't know what percentage of the population fit into that group, but
Well,
but
small
definitely
minority, but like there will always
small
be a
minority. But
small
it's
minority of any kind of person.
yeah. But a lot of those people are very influential. They're a lot of them might be part of the one percenters that are essentially the ones we need to battle against or use these laws to at least understand them and their perspective and figure out what their thumb screws might be to help bring them into the camp of saving the
Like
world.
I can give you a realistic example from communist Czechoslovakia when it turned into democratic Czech Republic, because there were many
Right.
people who were widely considered to be really bad actors in the Communist Party and who were running the industries and all the important stuff where a lot of money was made. And there was this whole like transitional period where it was unclear what is going to happen with them
Mm.
because there was a lot of political will or a lot of pressure on punishing them somehow or figuring out a way how to make sure that they can't be doing anything important in the future again in the Czech Republic.
Right.
And there was a process that was devised, which is called lustrace, just like I don't know how to even translate it into English, which essentially means like checking the conduct of people during the regime, and there were some criteria for disqualifying people if they've been, I don't know, like part of the secret service of the Communist Party or something like that. They wouldn't be allowed to be members of like political parties, or there were some like limitations for what they were allowed to do. But generally speaking, like it turned out, I guess, okay for those people because part of the sort of peaceful nature of the and compromise nature of the transition was that like they weren't like shot or imprisoned or like anything terrible. Nothing terrible happened to them. Like in the philosophy of Václav Havel, it's like we're not like them. So it's like not to become just a reboot of the same kind of problematic situation that the Communist Party started when they got rid of all the rich people at its beginning. So just not to repeat like the sort of sins of the past. To just start from like a more of a clean slate. So like eventually they sort of like figured out that they are okay, they don't have to worry. But during the transitional period, that's the example of the leverage. They were afraid that like if they are not on their best behavior, that the people, like the majority of the people, might decide to vote for something that will end up very badly for them. And so during that transitional period, they were suddenly nice to the workers and were being much more constructive in the society for that limited transitional period, because leverage was the only thing, like a really like danger of a really bad outcome for them was the only thing that could motivate these essentially worst of the worst people who were only in it for them, who were maybe even on the whole somewhat sadistic or just like even enjoying like having power over other people, sort of like the unfortunate result of the previous totalitarian system that filtered some of the worst people to the top. In comparison, even to a relatively dysfunctional democracy, was still worse in the, what kinds of elites it produced, because there were all kinds of perverse incentives for that. So these kinds of people, like, there are kinds of people who can be in the position of power who really only understand pressure being put on them if like a threat of something bad happening to them. You don't have to actually do it, but like some people only respond to this kind of leverage.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. I think you said it all. It's a pretty good. There are times and places for it, I guess, but at the same time, focus on the win-win where you can.
Yeah, it's not the option number one. It's the option of the last resort.
Yeah, it's like if they, yeah. Okay, I like that. Let's move on to the next one. Law 34: be royal in your own fashion, act like a king, to be treated like one.
I think there's a wisdom in that. It doesn't have to focus on being a king, but it's sort of you do have to respect yourself and project like an aura of that you're somebody to be respected, like to make sure that other people who would be disinclined to respect you do respect you. Like the sort of royal metaphor, I don't think is necessary to equating it to that, like a royal aristocracy. It's just that I think self-respect is like the more sort of light side, healthy conception of that. Like you do need to have self-respect and sort of project expectation that people should respect each other, which then makes it more likely that you will be respected, even by bad actors.
That makes sense. I like that. Yeah, it definitely applies. I mean, it's about just having a as best an air as you can around you. Be again bold and confident, I think, and just trying to. Yeah,
because I think
be a little more royal.
I think that's a mechanism. Like I also know an example for this one. It's like when it was like a Nazi regime, Sigmund Freud was still alive during the regime, and he's a prominent Jew who like invented the whole kind of Jewish science. So he was a persona non grata, or was on some sort of hit list. So at some point, they've sent like two young Nazi soldiers to arrest him. Pretty much the way I remember the anecdote, and. He was able, like the sort of like master of psychology that he was like sort of projecting just like such an aura of like being a respectable authority that he essentially made those Nazi officers like spellbound, and they just like respectfully let him be alone. So there's like I think in this way a lot of the like somebody who like who's another like big example of like a pacifistic personality who was like sort of authority in that field. It's like in America, his tenure, I should really remember his name, Noam Chomsky. So you have like this sort of like a persona that you like imagine like just start talking to them, and like sort of the sort of aura that they exert is that like, they can even live like Noam Chomsky lives in a, I guess, technically democratic regime that doesn't have dissidents, but in like we kind of a person like that, even like communist Czechoslovakia or like any sort of area like that with like a really oppressive regime or Nazi regime, and they can still be able to be fine because even like the worst people can't help but respect them and have some sort of like a natural deference to them in that they again rather choose to let them be than to like with the standing man example, than to try to really push the situation there because they fear that they may lose face in that encounter.
Okay, I like that. I definitely think that's something that applies to us. That we can try to constantly work at. Just be better personalities, but better, more respectable, and yeah, again, just bold and daring with what we do.
Or just
So
like
I like it.
but what it means is to project that you're not afraid, that you understand, and not naively, that you understand that like bad things might happen, but you have
Yeah,
already like made peace with like even the worst eventualities. I guess that's a Stoic philosophy. From
cool.
like
Okay.
Marcus Aurelius, I think is like one of the first thinkers in that vein, and I think he wrote a lot of like again like wisdom in like he wrote notes like just his ideas and stuff, and that's like one of the key books of like his sort of just notes and thoughts are just one of the key sources of the Stoic philosophy, and
Yeah.
I think it's very effective because I think like one of the key ideas in that vein were that like if you think through the worst possible outcomes ahead of time before they happen and give yourself time to sort of like make your peace with them, then when the situation arises that like no matter what happens you will be able to be just calm and collected during any situation, which again like is connected with confidence and respect and all those
Right.
things, because you're clearly just won't be projecting that you're afraid, you won't be panicking, you won't be stressed or fidgety or like or confused or in doubt. You would just be a clarity of mind, calm and collected, and therefore in control of the situation.
Good. Yeah, I like that. If I think of a Jedi Knight perspective as well, they're usually very calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah,
They don't.
stoicism is definitely inspiration for the
Yeah,
Jedi thing.
no, that's good. Okay, cool. I can definitely strive to be a little more like that myself. I think I definitely get a little fidgety, a little too talkative sometimes. It's something that I have to constantly
No, it's like if
kind of
I
rein
were to
myself
give
in.
you any notes, even for like a podcast or something, then just like yeah, working on your calm is
Mhm.
definitely a way to go. I think for you to improve
Yeah,
as a performer.
awesome. Yeah, and the more I can watch myself, I can definitely get better at that too. I think so. We'll hopefully progress as a couple, as a duo, that we can do that better. Very cool. Okay, law 35: master the art of timing. This is pretty
100%.
yeah, self-explanatory. I think we both agree on this one. Just about figuring out the best time for anything that we release, the best time for saving the world, the best time for bringing up certain topics.
Yeah, I
So
happen to be
it's
writing a
definitely
whole
fun.
book about a kind of approach to timing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's for sure a good law to bear in mind always. Law 36: disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge.
yeah, I
Kind of
guess.
interesting.
But
So
I sort of don't think it's the ideal perspective on that. Is like because it sounds like pretendy, like the way it's phrased, like you should
yeah,
pretend that you don't care. Sort of is implied in that statement. I think yeah, you should genuinely get to a state where you don't care. That
yeah,
would be like what they call best revenge, but it's again necessarily antagonistic language. It's just like it's not for like revenge to like show somebody else. It's like this is a kind of thing you do for yourselves. That
yeah,
like what other people think about it, or that other people have some good stuff that you don't have. That should be irrelevant. Like you should really genuinely get to a state where that doesn't phase you at all. It's just like you don't consider that to be a factor because that's just healthy.
yeah, yeah. Just knowing what your goal actually is, and being able to keep yourself sighted on that, and not worry about all these other things that may be goals for other people. Maybe things that look nice and shiny, but it's not what we need, and it's not what we want right now. Our goal is saving the world. So okay, I like that one.
And it's not
Um,
like somebody else can have that, and but we wouldn't, because that's the win-win strategy. It's like it's not
Win-win.
exclusive.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to worry. We don't have to worry about disdaining anything if we're trying to win-win with each other. We're trying to give everybody more,
Yeah,
so we don't necessarily have to disdain
not
and
nothing
ignore
to like
anybody.
envy to each other.
Right. No, we can learn from that. Law 37: create compelling spectacles. This is like you said with the thumbnails, with about just making sure that we're giving the most entertainment as well as enjoyment with our ideas and lessons as well, right? We have to work on our presentation,
Yeah, that's just artfulness. That's just skill.
artfulness. Yeah, yeah, definitely 100% agree that we need to always try to be as solid as we can with our artfulness. Okay. Law 38. Think as you like, but behave like others. This is,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't like this one either. It's,
That's a very defensive shadow strategy. That's not again
yeah.
the being in the light strategy.
Yeah, it goes with you're trying to manipulate people by being like them, by trying to ease them into a state of safety because they think that you agree with them and you're the same as them. So they're more open to listen to your ideas. They're more open to change
I think
based on
the
your
better
suggestions.
better version of this, as less problematic, is what I call mental aikido, and that just means that, like, yeah, some people like have ingrained beliefs that are problematic and that you very likely wouldn't disagree with as a average reasonable person. And what you don't want to do is like to just like be pissing them off by making fun of them and stuff, because that doesn't accomplish anything. It just further antagonizes the
Right.
situation. But it's not like behaving like them. It's about respecting them, like showing them like respect to us, like to a human being, while respectfully disagreeing. And mental aikido is that, like, I think the furthest you are justified to go in trying to convince them in this case to stop being in error, if it's like really objectively an error that they're in, as far as you can tell based on your best knowledge, then it's try to use their own ideas to make them realize that they're wrong,
Yeah.
because like they wouldn't be if they're not open to be listening to other people's opinions that are in conflict with what they believe. It's like an example of, like you said, what would Jesus do? There's like many like religious fundamentalist type people who may be therefore supporting all kinds of extreme policies, and I think like the way to, in this case, convince them to like stop making other people's lives a living hell with like trying to control their rights for abortion and stuff like that, which I think is like
Yeah.
highly ethically indefensible if you're in the position of like trying to force people to do something in particular about this. Especially if
Yeah.
you're like a guy and it's just like never going to affect you personally. So in those cases, if you can talk to them about that in a way that like, what do you like, somehow make them consider, like what would just like make them like make them in like in a situation where they would say like what Jesus, like what values are the values that Jesus stands for, and
Yeah.
then like just pointing it out in a way that they may begin to realize that like, oh, I have a cognitive dissonance going on. I believe in these values, but I'm practicing something else, and
Yeah.
that could like get through to them. Still might not get through to them. But in this case, like it's not that like behaving like that, pretending that you also believe in Jesus. Like it's not. That's not that like not even effective. I would say. What
Yeah.
it is about is just like don't mock them, even if you disagree with them. Don't be aggressive toward them if you disagree with them. You can definitely try to, like in most normal human situations, which are not about politics, just be a normal human being around them, and that there you can become easily friends with them, even if you
Yeah.
vehemently disagree about some politically charged things. And then, like at most, if like just make them listen, like make them listen to themselves is
Mm.
essentially, as far as I would go in actually trying to convince someone, because it's not just about inspiration. This is really about trying to convince them if you want to really avoid a harm. But that's like the most
Yeah.
extreme I think I would go with this.
Okay, I like that. I always like thinking of if I was in a room with this person, and we're locked in there together. The only way we're getting out of this room is finding some way to meet in the middle, or to find some way to compromise and respect one another and come up with a solution to whatever problem we're facing that we both agree with, right? It's the whole kind of forcing consensus thing that we've talked a little bit about in the past, that it's very, very hard to do. But I think under the right circumstances, if the respect is there and you both truly value each other's opinion as human beings, and you truly value each other's uh, um, agency to be intelligent human individuals, and you respect each other enough that you're willing to bounce ideas off each other, I guess, and kind of reflectively throw ideas back at each other and keep rephrasing things until you get to a point where you both agree on something. It could be anything. Um, I think there's definitely room for growth there. I think definitely trying to foster society where that is easier to do is a big part of the saving the world goal. Making a society where people can compromise, where they can talk to each other respectfully and openly, and come to conclusions
Yeah,
together
but yeah, of
to the
course,
best
still,
path forward.
yeah, still not disingenuously. Like it's not a trick that you're
Yes,
pulling on
yeah,
someone.
it's not a trick. Okay, yeah, 100% agree that we can definitely use that law, but use it in a win-win, altruistic kind of fashion where we're not trying to, um, like you said, trick them. Okay, next one. Stir up waters to catch fish.
Yeah, but this is which
Um,
number? Just like
this is
the.
we're at number 39 now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're almost there. Stir up waters to catch fish. So I guess this is kind of stirring the pot a little bit, right? Where you're trying to get people to open up, trying to get them to,
Yeah,
let you know what their actual concerns are. Get
I
to the
would
real root of the problem.
I would agree with like some degree of provocation makes sense to make
Yeah,
things happen, to get things moving, to like make people interested in the first place.
yeah, I like that. I like the idea of inspiring conversation, inspiring action, inspiring people to get into the weeds, to not just say, "Oh, I don't want to deal with that. That's too complicated. It's too hard for me to care about, so I'm not going to care." You've got to somehow inspire that caring a little bit, and inspire the
Or
conversation
just
to
like
lead towards the action.
poke them into to start thinking.
Yeah, I like that. So that's a good law. I think there's a lot of light side to that one. Law 40, despise the free lunch. This is a bit of an interesting one that goes kind of both ways, where you're basically, nothing in the world is free, right? And you have to realize that whenever someone's buying you lunch, they're expecting to get something out of it, and vice versa. So you should actually kind of want to pay for lunch, or you should enjoy paying for lunch, because there's value there in showing that you both care about it. But
Yeah,
but
there's
somebody's got to pay for it, right?
it's just
Someone's getting a free lunch.
it's one of the arguments where I don't like how like some Republicans or other political actors like that, how far they run with that. Because it's not about like that. This doesn't mean like the wisdom in it isn't that you should deprive people of everything and they should make it really hard for them to work for it. That's is not really what that I think should mean. It just means that like you shouldn't be expected to be handed things, sure. And there should be a cost to things that have value, so that you value the things and believe that it has value because it has cost. So there's like a core element of human psychology that works this way, and that if you're creating any kind of system or solution, it has to take that into account. That's just, you should be trying to like poke people a little bit in that direction. But there are especially people who like sort of defend this perspective as like their only philosophy or their main core idea, is that they would never first start with like trying to make people do something by positive motivation. They would like immediately skip to like expecting everybody's the worst, and therefore requires the worst, most harsh motivation. And that's like, maybe there's somebody who really harshly needs to be motivated in this universe. That's entirely possible, and that's why really harsh situations exist. But in general, you first should try honey before you try vinegar, and then see how many people that affected. And then you can try, like on the rest, you can try to impose something a bit more strict, and then just like a very measured application of that pressure is what I think you should try to want to implement.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of, again, if you can both get a free lunch, if you can get a win-win situation where there's a deal on a free lunch at some store, and you can go there together and enjoy a great free lunch together or something, while publicizing that store and helping that store get more advertising or whatever it might be, I'm all for it, right? Like I'm a huge coupon person. Coupons are kind of about a free lunch a little bit in some ways, right? So there's all these different perspectives on how you look at it, that a free lunch can actually be a really good thing, as long as you understand,
like in some degree, a motivating factor. It's just like a kind of motivation that you can also use to get people to do something. So it's a tool. Yeah. It's like one of the tools that you can use to achieve some sort of outcome that you want.
Yeah, and it's a perfect example of how it can be win-lose. It can go too far, but if you at least are mindful of that, you can definitely make it a win-win as well, I think. So it's definitely an interesting law to ponder. Okay, next one. Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes, because you're destined to fail if you do. That seems a little sad.
A little bit. Also, I think it's sort of misplaced. I think that's not a particularly wise perspective, because, or if there is any wisdom in it, it's that you shouldn't try to be someone else and succeed at that. So it's just like the whole concept of it, I think, is like misguided. And that's the bit of wisdom in there. It's just like, it's the point of it, I think, should be to understand that you should not even be trying to be succeeding as like somebody else who was like the great something before you. That's you should be the sort of great, unique version of what you can be great at.
Yeah, you can definitely follow in their footsteps, right? You can continue maybe a part of their legacy a little bit, but you make it your own and you expand it, or you change it, or you pivot
Yeah,
to become
I'm
your own
generally
version.
always again, but I guess I'm just an individualist, but I'm always against the sort of like authoritarian traditionalist sentiments. Like I have to worship my ancestors. I think that's that like again, there's a little bit of like grain of truth in every such sentiment, but in this case, I don't think
Yeah,
it's just like it really is really constructive to build your whole sense of identity and build your own society on ancestral worship. Just don't think that's
yeah,
a great way forward to improvement of society.
yeah. There's definitely some lessons to be learned from that one. Okay, Law 42: strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Again, looking at it from the trickster point of view, if you've got a terrorist, or you've got a hydra, or you've got some negative, 1% Republican, or 1% anyone from any party that wants to keep things as is. They don't want to progress. They want to be conservative. They want to keep the world as is because it's working for them as is. Why rock the boat? So in order to do that, you've got to somehow find the shepherds of those old ways of thinking and kind of knock them off, or you've got to cut off the right heads of the hydra in order to
Yeah, I
allow
just would be careful
the
about
world to
using the
happen.
cutting of the heads metaphor a little bit. That's a bit too extreme, I
Yeah,
guess, for our project. But yeah,
yes, it is.
confront
Yeah,
it. I would use the word like you have to confront people who clearly are just doing harm, especially
yeah,
in the way like bamboozling people into like following them into nonsense. And that generally is unfortunately unwinnable in a sense. Like you can just somehow convince the sheep in this metaphor. Like you can't usually convince them away from that people who's bamboozling them. In this case, you have to somehow deal with the person's capacity to be able to bamboozle. It just gets into dangerous territory. Like, okay, so we've deplatformed Trump from the internet,
yeah,
and it's like it's working in that sense though. It's like sort of proving that like it can be knocked off the platform and thus
yeah.
decrease the number of sheep they can recruit, let's say, or people
Well,
they can bamboozle. At the same time, it's like it can get dangerous. So it's just like this is a bit of it's a tricky thing. I think that always depends on the situation and on how bad that person is. And
yeah,
sort of the more extremely bad that person is, the more extreme measures therefore are justified to deal with them.
yeah. The best example for us is, of course, climate deniers. Some of the media personalities that
Yeah.
are just, they probably don't even believe what they're saying. I have a hard time believing that this person, an intelligent being, actually believes the stuff they're spouting off, but they're making money by doing it. So I can understand why they continue to, peddle their nonsense, because millions of followers love it and get off on it, or whatever, or enjoy it, and are willing to pay money to keep them spouting it. So they keep doing it for
Yeah,
their
I
own
guess like
personal
the argument
gain.
of like the most light side counter response is that you have to just be better at doing the opposite of like persuading people the other way around. And I guess that like of course that's a core to the opposite strategy, because like anarchists like Urza would say like that's how it's supposed to be resolved, not by a
Mm.
centralized authority by like censoring them, but by the opposition, like being you, like people who are trying to accomplish something better, just being better speakers. And like, sure,
Yes.
that's like a core of it. It's just that
Yeah.
then you get into situations again which become more life and death, and
Yeah.
that's when usually the more extreme measures have to be contemplated, because like we can't just be talking about this forever and not doing anything about the climate change. It just
Yeah.
that's not an option. So
No.
again, I think like I'm a big fan of like a measured response, in that like responding in like the right degree to the
Mm.
situation at hand, and that like there's like a in this sense like flexibility or adaptability in the universe of that like it's not just one or the other. One thing always works, something never works. It's just in most situations there is a kind of response that's exactly measured for that situation, and the art of like successfully navigating situations is like being able to reliably use the right level of response and kind of response to the situation.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the battle becomes then winning the battle against the leaders. So we're trying to lead towards saving the world. We're trying to inspire good leaders, win-win leaders. So we're fighting against the win-lose leaders, let's just call them. That's probably a good differential. The win-lose leaders that focus on their group, just them, just their partisan side of anything, whether it's vaccination or climate change, disease, whatever it might be. Um, Anything that inspires win-lose situations. That's what we're battling against. So we want to cut off or strike the shepherds of those win-lose situations to try to allow those sheep to be free to possibly join win-win situations.
Yeah,
Does
because
that make
like
sense?
such people, like the logic there is that such people can also follow a good cause. It's just
Yeah.
like the kind of people who are need to be led by someone.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Very cool. Okay. That's a good law. Law 44. Or sorry, law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. This is pretty straightforward. I
Sure,
think,
100%. Just win hearts and
yeah,
minds. That's
we have
that's
to
the
win
real
hearts,
power.
hearts and minds. Yeah, don't think we even need to discuss that. It's pretty self-explanatory. Law 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. This is similar to previous one. You're trying to mirror your opponent, I guess, and show him the error of his ways by mirroring him, letting him see himself in you. So he's kind of can see his own argument
Yeah,
fail
yeah. That's
because
I
you're
guess
kind of
like what I said. The mental aikido or like satire works like that a lot.
yeah. Yeah, so I think that applies. We've already covered that, so it definitely makes sense that you want to, again, if you're trying to win through an argument versus action, we talked about that before too. This is kind of one of those ways where you're acting as like I said, a satire effect, or like you said, as a mirror, so they can literally see how you're acting. You're acting, trying to act like them a little bit, and they can see the error in that acting. Um, it's interesting. That's something we can definitely, I think, apply as well here to
Yeah, it's a
point
tactic.
out.
It's just for sure it's a
Yeah,
usable tactic.
point out win lose situations. That's again our focus is pointing out win lose situations that could be changed to win win. I think that being our focus. Okay, great. Law 45, four more left. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once.
I guess it's a bit of a caution against full revolutions.
Mm,
That's like more of a, but it's essentially what this is conservatism. That's what that is. Like change should be
yeah,
measured and gradual. It shouldn't be sudden and incomplete. And sure, like historically, there have been many examples of radical revolutions that did more harm than good. That's like with all things. Like there is definitely some, but again, my one of my biases that technically is logical fallacies. Sort of like I like sort of balanced approaches.
yeah,
So I would always have a natural inclination to side with an approach that's like you keep saying measured. So in
yeah.
this case, I would like generally agree with it. Just like I know that often people use this type of argument to be completely conservative and just prevent change at all completely. So I think
Yeah.
it's just disingenuousness. Like if you're not being disingenuous about it, this makes sense.
It's definitely important to progress, and have your good goals. And that's something I think we can definitely focus on, inspiring leaders to make one small change at a time and progress each and every day towards that grand goal of saving the world. So definitely applies. Law 46, never appear too perfect.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny thing. I sort of
Yeah,
have a bit of an issue with that in my personal life. In that, like, I have tried to work on myself very hard for a very long time to improve my skills and knowledge and also personal qualities. And yeah, it's one of those subconscious things that like it's intimidating at best and sort of like makes you less relatable. It's like why
yeah,
people have a hard time relating with Superman, like of all characters, because their characters were just not supposed to be relatable. But like for human beings, especially like leaders of political movements and stuff, relatability is a kind of an important thing, just like confidence and
yeah,
integrity. So yeah, I would agree with this. Like it's sort of like sad for me, because in some cases, sort of being a really like a paragon, essentially like sort of as perfect example of something as can be. For some people, it
yeah,
is inspirational, like aspirational, like I want to
yeah,
become like that. So in like mentor mentee relationships, there could be maybe some situation in which this could work out, sort of be inspirational. But in general, in the sense of like political sense of convincing people
yeah.
to do stuff, relatability is very important.
I like this law as well. It goes back a little bit to what we said about the God complex concept, where if you think you're perfect, there's a good chance you're going to turn people off. They're going to think that you've got a God complex, and so on. So
Also might just
it's
seem
a good law.
unattainable, like it just might
Yeah,
seem like a too difficult thing to achieve and inspire the wrong kind of followers, like the sheep
yeah.
followers who just want to worship the leader. That's just not healthy.
That's not what we're looking for at all. We need to inspire new generation of leaders.
Yeah, yeah, just I heard, did you say believers?
No, no,
It just sounded like you're like making me a
leaders. Yeah,
marketer there for a second.
inspire
Or
new
just
generation
like
of leaders.
therefore we really need to work on our flaws.
Yes, we need to be mindful of them at least a little bit,
No, 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 no. No.
not be afraid to show them.
You misunderstand. To work to
Okay.
have them to be more relatable.
All right.
That's what I. It's what I. It was a joke. That's what I
Yes,
meant.
I get you. I get you. I hear you. Good
No, it's
point.
just like what that means is that you don't have to get rid of 100% of your perceived flaws. That's not
Yeah.
like for instance, some people like I might try to work on my accent to completely remove any trace of the fact that I'm not native speaker. But I've sort of realized it's more relatable to just relax and have some measure of the accent because that sort of in a way is better than perfection in speech.
It's our flaws that make us fun, make us unique, and make us special in some ways,
And
right? If
human.
everyone
It's
is
just
perfect,
it just feels better.
yeah, I like it. It makes it fun. Good. So law 47. Don't go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop.
Sure, depends on the kind of goal. Like if it's the kind of like a win-lose goal that's fairly finite, and like sure, if you're a conqueror, you should stop at like a reasonable amount of territory conquered,
Yeah.
or otherwise it's gonna go bad.
Yeah.
So it's just like there's a whole like the kinds of leaders who are very win-lose leaders often have a tendency to never know when to stop. And that's what like this mentality got them into the position like of leadership because they had to compete and outcompete everybody else. But in the sort of win-win, open-ended scenario, it's not very desirable to just be even like for that to be that's
Well, you don't need to
expected
stop.
to be a
Yeah.
thing that you have to contend with too much because it's not like there's a too much of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, yeah. If your goal is helping everybody have win-win, then there's really no spreading yourself too thin because no one's really out to get you. You don't have to worry about someone stabbing you in the back if you're truly just trying to help each other. And the majority of the world is focused on win-win situations. So I think it's definitely good to be mindful of, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily apply with saving the world. We should never stop trying to make the world a better place. We can always make it slightly better. So
yeah,
I think
because that's the thing. It's not you can't have too much of it because it's essentially attempting to achieve something that in 100% isn't achievable. So it's just approaching a mark. It's never exceeding a mark.
Yeah, and making small, goals along the way to achieve. Now you've stopped that goal. Now you're going to focus on the next goal. And you're never stopping entirely of anything. You're just making new goals.
Yeah.
So I like that concept of small baby steps to get towards where you want to go. So that definitely applies here. And the last one, Law 48, assume formlessness. This is like the Bruce Lee style of being water to the cup, right?
A bit like sort of a Zen or Taoism. I think that's very Tao, meaning that like you can only the sort of Asian type wisdoms of like you can only be broken if you're solid. If you don't have a form that can be broken, then if it's adaptable naturally, then it can be broken. So it's like sure. I am a bit of a fan of Taoism, even though like I'm naturally very not Tao person because I'm very driven to improve and become better. And then it's like all the things like when in Tao you're supposed to just learn how to be at peace with who you always were, type of different approach. So it's good for like relaxing perspective for being relaxed at being yourself and being at peace and happy living your life. So I sort of have a much sympathy for that whole approach, and that's why I sort of admire that in nature, which is like a sort of nature is a sort of like the primal image of like what Tao means. It's just like study natural objects like stone. It's just like a rock. It's just like a rock is really good at being a rock. It doesn't overthink being a rock and doesn't struggle with being a rock. It just is what it is, and that's great. Iron rock's great. So it's about like sort of the approach of you don't have to needlessly maximize resistance. It's like if you can find like a low resistance way of doing something, that's the best way of doing it because that's the most stable way of doing it and easiest way to adopt of doing it.
Great. I like it. Yeah. So to wrap it up, there's about 2/3 of them that we agreed with light side, very much so. They apply to us. There's things we can all learn from. And there's about a third of them that are a little more negative, Machiavellian connotations, where you can learn something from them, obviously, but it's about how you phrase them and how you focus on the win-win versus the win-lose.
Yeah,
So
those aren't the plan A.
yeah, yeah. So I definitely think it's interesting to go through all 48 of these and just kind of see how they fit with you and what you can learn from combating them, from understanding them, and making our goals of saving the world a little more achievable by understanding these laws of power and using that power to inspire win-win leaders.